Now, in order to establish continuity with the previous things, one of the things that we see at this point with when we deal with Bhagat Singh and with subsequent events, and also I have put together a little bit on Subhash Chandra Bose. What has happened is, we talked about Ambedkar last time, right? Now, you could say that Ambedkar, in a way, Ambedkar's insistence on the priority of the social over the political, right, which was one of the big planks. It goes back, Rabindranath Tagore is also emphasizing the priority of the social over the political. And in the 19th century, essentially, the 19th century Indian thinking is on this, of that kind. That is, 19th century is dominated by Indians who are interested in social reform as something that the ideas coming from Europe have instigated. European ideas have generated a new awareness. So it's like you're seeing yourself in a mirror and you're saying, okay, there are all these problems with our society. We have the caste system is one of the most obviously the most pressing, the most shameful of them. But within the caste system, there are other things. Among the Brahmins, these sati, the practice of sati, which is widow burning, the practice of marrying of children at a very young age, and also marrying of girls to very old men for money and so on, and also prohibition on widows marrying again, and all kinds of things. So in many ways, social, sexual and other kinds of arrangements that were prevailing at that time, all of these became focus of attention. Now what we see as a result of all these sort of reflections on the self is that by about the end of the 19th century, Partha Chatterjee has an essay which I didn't include because it's a very well-known essay. I thought I'll give you the reference and you can follow it up. What he said was that in negotiating with the British, the Indians said, look, leave our society alone. We will take care of whatever reforms need to be done in our society. They said, what the British are bringing to our thing is, they made a difference between the material world and the spiritual world, the public domain and the private domain. The private is where your own culture, your spirit, your own existence as a community, right, from which you get your identity, etc. These things are private. The politics is of the public world. So the public domain is where the British rule was accepted. So you accept that. You say, okay, they are here to reform ours, but not. So you draw a line between public and private, material and spiritual, and you say economic, rational, as opposed to emotional, right? Affective and so on, and you say this is off limits to you. You don't come into this domain. So in a way, what happens is then it begins to sort of take sort of concrete shape and continue. Even though people like Tagore and Ambedkar, etc., are arguing against this prioritization of political independence over social reform, as we have seen with Gandhi, it just becomes resolved. The question is completely resolved. That means political freedom is the plank of the Congress. It becomes, there's no question after that. But as far as, in some ways, you can say that people like Rabindranath Tagore are sort of, their views, their way of thinking about the whole issue is sidelined by this development. But people like Ambedkar were demanding attention to social issues from a far more urgent kind of necessity. Tagore was saying, our society needs reform, we have this opportunity, let's do this, and so on. But for Ambedkar, it was a question of a large section of the Indian population having to be, get some assurances about its status, that its status will not remain the same if political freedom comes, that it will have a different kind of independent possibilities for a different kind of existence after independence, that they will not continue to have a caste system and so on. So Ambedkar's demands continue to be play a role throughout this period and even after independence, and it continues to be a problem. But essentially the Congress has given, in Congress there is not much scope anymore in the 20th century, 20s afterwards, with the advent of Gandhi, for prioritizing social issues over political issues. Is gone, right? So whatever is done on the social side within the Congress is done in the Gandhian way, which is that the leadership, that is the upper caste people, have to undertake some kind of sort of action. They have to do things like they have to go clean their toilets, they have to undertake some kind of interdining, sit and eat together, and all of these things in order to expiate their sin. So Gandhi turns untouchability into a sin committed by the upper castes against the untouchables. And so he says you have to now expiate your sins. That is, you have to do something to cleanse yourself. So it becomes a kind of thing which is addressed to the upper caste people of the Hindu social order, rather than something which says, for instance, as Ambedkar said last time, you could very well say Congress membership is not open to anybody who practices untouchability. You take a pledge and so on. Why don't you do it? So, of course you don't do it because already Congress has its history of membership, which they don't want to take it at that level, and least of all do they want to listen to Ambedkar and let him decide what the Congress should do. So it's not. So you have the situation where Gandhi has established himself as absolute ruler, in some ways dominant figure in the Congress, and he has shown how successful he can be by organizing the non-cooperation movement. 1919, 20, 21. This period is a tremendous sort of mobilization. So suddenly the Congress becomes a mass movement. And then we saw how there is violence in a small place in Uttar Pradesh, where the mob of people who came out because Gandhi called for the non-cooperation movement, but this mob became violent and it burnt a police station with 20-odd people, police constables burnt in the process. Gandhi calls off the agitation and says, we Indians are not fit for non-cooperation, we're not fit for freedom, that I made a big mistake, and so on. Now Gandhi has shown possibilities of mobilization, and so the social question has gone out, as I said. But within the political domain, a new dichotomy has opened up. A new polarization has opened up between those who believe that you have to take arms to liberate yourself, and those who follow Gandhi in saying it has to be a non-violent agitation. So this is the new thing. No longer is it a question of whether it's social or and so on. Because the Swadeshi, of course, it happens even before Gandhi, in the sense that Gandhi comes with his non-violence agenda after the Swadeshi has started off a series of terrorist attacks by these people who wanted to liberate by creating disruption, throwing the colonial order out of kelter, and creating conditions for ouster of the British and so on. So in the 20th century, by and large, what happens then is that the social versus political sort of polarization yields place to a violent versus non-violent, or armed versus unarmed struggles. So armed struggles obviously are delegitimized by the Gandhian dominance, right? So today's, what we have is, I mean, there's a story, but that story is a separate, that's just for us to sort of look at how creative writers are responding. But the two figures that I want to talk about today are Bhagat Singh, who is a member of a kind of socialist, republican, communist. It's not a very coherent organization, but it is influenced by Marxism, by other kinds of socialistic thought, and so on. And another figure who is even more controversial, which is Subhash Chandra Bose. He is not somebody whose writings are, he is not known for his writings, but he is a major figure in this alternative, people who tried the alternative, people who tried to oppose Gandhi within the Congress, right? There are many who tried to do that from this particular point of view, having first been actually Gandhi's, favorites and so on. So that's one, Subhash Chandra Bose. And so we'll look at these two today. Bhagat Singh. Now, Bhagat Singh is one of the most charismatic, one of the most iconic, like, you might say he is a bit like Che, on a smaller scale within India. Bhagat Singh is like, everybody's favorite icon, the communists are very far, consider him to be their icon, right? But he's also been adopted by others, like, everybody now adopts Bhagat Singh as their own icon, right? And you have some images here. Incidentally, this is the picture on the right here, with the hat. That is the most celebrated sort of image of Bhagat Singh. That's what was most commonly taken as the image of Bhagat Singh. On the left, he is in prison. He is in, he's a Sikh, and so his Sikh, his hair is showing there. Of course, he became an atheist, and so he was, cut his head. But what I wanted to show is the more recent sort of, the attempts to appropriate Bhagat Singh by various people. There are about 7-8 movies made about this figure, and in fact, in the 2000s, in just 1 year or 2 year period, 3 films were made by with three different directors and actors, in color, and basically treating him as a macho hero, like muscle generally. And not only him, but also his colleagues, the other well-known revolutionaries who were part of this team, Chandrasekhar Azad and Ram Prasad Bismil and so on. They all feature in this, and it's essentially about their heroic posture, their what called kshatra, the idea of power and muscular sort of militaristic sort of idea.
What caste is
He is Sikh. Sikh is another religion.
So
No, they do have, it's hard to say, but he's not some lower caste, that I can say. But what he was, because in some...
military can be Kshatriya?
Yeah, but military is not Kshatriya in that decisive way. In the sense, Kshatriyas, it's very, that relationship is loose. But the Sikhs, are generally the Sikh community. The Sikh community is in Punjab, the state of Punjab. And the British, when they wanted to recruit for their army, they started looking around to see who are the really martial, right? Who are the ones who have that sort of muscular, traditions of fighting and all that. Because not everybody, because Indians, a lot of Indians look puny and, so thin and starved and so on. So they identified certain, the Sikhs were among the people whom they identified. The Rajputs, the Gurkhas, and so on, who were, they were called the martial races, and so Sikhs were in that kind of identification. This is one of the kind of images. You can see this kind of, you can see this image here. This is Bhagat Singh with a Christian sort of, and Hindu, and it's a kind of, you can see heads of the other martyrs being held up by his, in his hands, and various other inspiring figures in the background, and the dead people, coming back and showering him with blessings, and Bharat Mata herself sort of at his feet. And here is another fantasy of Bhagat Singh's followers today. That is, this is a very new development. We have a student, Kunal Duggal, in my university, who did some work on the new icons, the new Bhagat Singh following. Bhagat Singh has a lot of new following, and depending on what they believe in, they attribute to Bhagat Singh their own sort of beliefs, and they also change the look of Bhagat Singh in order to suit. So, for instance, this idea, this Bhagat Singh wearing that turban, and this is not Bhagat Singh the revolutionary. Bhagat Singh the revolutionary was somebody who is already sort of in his last years. He has adopted a very modern sort of look for himself with that hat and everything. And he has given up on religion, all religious practices and so on. And he has an essay which we have here, Why I Am an Atheist and so on. But in the recovery of Bhagat Singh as an icon by popular Punjab, in Punjab and in that Haryana, that area, there is a tendency to give him all kinds of new sort of iconic sort of attributes. So here you can see the Revolutionary Bank of India is issuing this 10,000 rupee note, in which instead of Gandhi, our notes always have Gandhi. So here is this Bhagat Singh gracing this 10,000. The Indian government has so far never issued a 10,000 rupee note, as far as I know, at least not for public consumption. But so this image was actually put out by the CPI ML, which is one of the Maoist outfits in Punjab. So, I mean, there are many. This is Kunal Duggal's. I just took some from his study. He says the identity of Bhagat Singh is represented within the regional identity as an upper caste Jat Sikh in Punjab, similar to the way in which Shivaji is represented as the Hindu king of Maharashtra and linked with Maharashtrian pride. Various state mechanisms time and again have used it as a regional asset to evoke regional nationalism, even though these historical personalities are known as national heroes. The evocation of regional identity takes place by elevating the status or stature of these people visually. So, the representation of Bhagat Singh with pagadi, that is the turban, can be seen as an attempt to create a Jat Sikh identity, which may be a product of the particular discourse of regional nationalism aiming for a separate state. So, it's happening in the context of Punjab. There is a Punjabi sort of nationalism, and in the 80s there was a very strong movement for what is called Khalistan, which is a independent Punjab state, and it was a very violent thing, which some say that Indira Gandhi actually created that in order to for political purposes, but it turned against her. And indeed, the people who then killed Indira Gandhi, assassinated her, were from this Khalistan, the separatist movement. People who felt that because there was a raid on the temple, the Golden Temple, which is a Sikh temple, in order to evict the terrorists, and so in retaliation, they killed her. I mean, two people killed her. Bhagat Singh is nationally represented as wearing a hat, but wearing the pagadi is popular in Punjab. And this becomes then the question of regional Sikh versus national atheist kind of identity. Now, to come to Bhagat Singh, see about the caste, he is from a Jat family. Jats are a peasant caste, actually in Haryana, Punjab area and UP, parts of UP, that region, mainly Punjab, Haryana, and they are a peasant caste. They're kind of not Rajput, but more like agricultural caste. The films. I just had a film review from one of the films which was released in 2002, I think. It says, this film review says that in this film there is an effort to posit the differing philosophies of Gandhi and Bhagat against each other in a simplistic and flawed manner. Gandhi and Nehru become wimps, while Bhagat is shown as a churlish and petulant Gandhi basher. Well, we'll see that Bhagat Singh was critical of Gandhi. The first reading we have shows has Bhagat Singh writing about the slogan "Long Live Revolution," because somebody writing in the Modern Review says this is a meaningless slogan. So he says, he tries to defend it, saying that to say long live doesn't mean literally mean that it should live long, but that it's the spirit of the revolution should survive for a long time, and so on. Now this group, this Hindustan Republican Association, which also became the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, now its membership is very, as Bhagat Singh puts it, many of his comrades were believers. That is, they believed in God, they prayed, and all those kinds of things. They did not. So it was drawing from some sources, Marxist. They were reading Marxist thought. We must also remember that this is in the wake of the Russian Revolution, right? This is just after the Russian Revolution, the 20s. Young people, so they, learning about the revolution everywhere and getting inspired by all those things and trying to bring to the Indian national struggle a different kind of practice, different set of practices. And using the, you can also see that they are using the language of revolutionary language, which is obviously prevalent all over the world, and but they are undertaking these what were called terrorist acts in those days, which is violent attacks on individuals or bomb throwings and so on. So first thing is they kill a police officer called John Saunders, who it was rumored was very when Lajpat Rai, one of the big leaders of Punjab, very in those days a very man of great stature. There was a public procession, public protest in which many people, including Lajpat Rai and other Congress people, were all marching, and this police is supposed to have brutally attacked the mob with lathis and so on. And Lala Lajpat Rai was particularly badly beaten up, and although he died a few days later, the general impression was that it was this beating, this was brutal assault, which caused his death. And therefore, this group of people undertake to kill two police officers. One of them actually then is not John Saunders but someone else. But John Saunders is killed. And so many people, at this point, four people or three or four people who were associated with that murder are sentenced to death. Now, this is one of the first indications that there is this party. Posters which said Hindustan Socialist Republican Army is responsible for this killing of Saunders. And it said Saunders is dead, Lalaji is avenged, and so on. So the 20s are a time when a lot of these kinds of assaults are happening. There's in Maharashtra, there's another famous case in which a police officer was similarly assaulted. He was sort of ambushed in the, when he was traveling and killed and so on. So in different Maharashtra, Punjab, Bengal, there are these terrorist kind of outfits operating, small groups, which claim. Now, there is one thing is the relation between this outfit called the Hindustan Socialist Republican Army and the Communist Party. Initially, there doesn't seem to have been any relation at all. The Communist Party in India is set up in the 30s. 20, different dates are given. Some say 1925. And the prime movers there are people who have had an international sort of communistic association with the Soviet Revolution, M.N. Roy and others. So there is and it also involves some people from the CPGB, that is Communist Party of Great Britain, who are also coming to India and trying to establish, communistic presence and so on. So the association is not there, at least overtly. There is no indication of it. Right. So then the other incident that happens is where Bhagat Singh is directly involved and captured, is that they go to the Central Legislative Assembly. This is a kind of very attenuated, very small scale sort of representative government kind of thing which British have established in India. So in 1919 they established this. They say Indians can rule themselves in certain areas, but it is, as Bhagat Singh argues in his writings, which are it's it's a mockery of democracy. Basically, people are elected, but the elections are based on extremely restrictive qualifications. You have to be educated, you have to have this much income and so on, which basically means that a very, very small number of people are voting and electing, and some are not even elected, they are nominated, and so they all come together and form what is called a Central Legislative Assembly. Now, in this assembly, they pass various kinds of resolutions, and the Viceroy can look at the resolution and say, okay, if he likes it, and if he doesn't like it, he says, no, nothing doing. So that was the nature of that legislature. It was supposed to be a law-making body, but it had no powers to make any laws, which could not be overturned by the Viceroy. So the Viceroy had a complete veto power over anything. And in any case, they were not allowed to legislate on any big issues of the state. It was some small local revenue expenditure related items, and some small very minor issues were even permitted to be discussed. For instance, in many instances, whenever these people were caught, like when the John Saunders police case happened, and when these people were caught and they were going to be sentenced to death, the Legislative Assembly passes a resolution saying that we request that, saying that they should not be hanged, they should be given life sentence. But of course, it's a it's just so even the Legislative Assembly is actually pleading with the Viceroy or with the government to do something, rather than saying we resolve that it will not be the case or whatever. So they keep passing the resolutions, and they keep, and so of course as patriots, some of them are who get elected are members of the Congress. So what they do basically is they keep passing resolutions saying we want India to be as an independent state and all those things. But these are again so he says, that is Bhagat Singh, he says, the Central Legislative Assembly exists only to demonstrate to the world India's humiliation and helplessness, and it symbolizes the overriding domination of an irresponsible and autocratic rule. He's saying this in court where he's being tried for the bomb throwing. He says, in short, we have utterly failed to find any justification for the existence of an institution which, despite all its pomp and splendor, organized with the hard-earned money of the sweating millions of India, is only a hollow show and a mischievous make-believe. And yes, this is the other thing. It's all being funded. The taxes are tax payer is paying for this kind of big Central Assembly, which has no function, no effective function whatsoever. It only is there to show that British have some goodwill. Indian public leaders, that is Bhagat Singh, now also targets those who participate in this charade, saying, you go ahead, you help the British to promote themselves in this way. Now here, utopian, so he then attacks Gandhian program. So this is in the late, this is in, these events are taking place in the late 20s and early 30s, right? So it's already one decade of Gandhi's dominance over the Congress. Now you can see that this opposition to this method of non-violence and Gandhi's absolute dominance of the Congress is generating all kinds of new attempts to counter, right? One of them is this party. It says the utopian non-violence is opposed. It says the elimination of force at all costs is utopian. He says, of course, there should, use of force for without reason is not justified, but you cannot simply rule out, as a principle, rule out violence in any movement. Yeah, here again, one of the things that comes forth in Bhagat Singh's writings is, for the first time in the Indian sort of political context, in the 19th century in Bengal, there is a youth movement, what you can call a youth. It's not a youth movement, but there is a kind of young Bengal. There's Derozio, these radical teachers in the new colleges of Calcutta. They are gathering a lot of young people around them, right? And together they are challenging, and that's one moment, early moment in the history of Indian struggle for freedom, is that this young Bengal movement and these radical teachers who are teaching all the republican ideals of French Revolution and other things. They are drawing from Mill, from English thought like Mill and the French, republican thinking, etc. And they are these colleges have been started newly, and all these people are flocking to the colleges, and these teachers, who are themselves, some of them are highly, who have maybe studied abroad and come back, etc. So they are holding these classes as well as meetings outside of the classroom, and extremely popular teachers, and generally the evening events that they conducted and so on, which is one moment where the youth as a concept comes into play within the national movement. But after that it goes out. There's no such thing as a youth related. After that you have Bankim Chatterjee, and then you have the Congress party itself, which is set up by Alan Octavian Hume and all these Annie Besant and all of these people who are not, there's no youth element there. Youth is not a factor that comes in. Suddenly with Bhagat Singh and others you get the youth movement. Bhagat Singh emphasizes again and again the duty of the youth, and the youth here is being positioned. I wanted to, the Indonesian case is very interesting, which I've been looking at for some time. That there's this youth. Youth had a presence which is something quite extraordinary, and I had a sense that in India, this Bhagat Singh and others are somehow, they are trying to do something similar. That probably there was a climate of for the emergence of youth as a political category, in that time, and that in some places it actually became concretized, whereas in other places it didn't. And probably this Bhagat Singh's movement, and in that period there are others who are talking about youth, and there is I've been trying to collect stuff to see how much is this youth category functioning there. There is a liberal intellectual who is himself not youth, but an old man who is giving some lectures in the 20s, late 20s, around the same time. And he talks about how what is happening to our country. All these young people, they are demanding all kinds of unreasonable, making all kinds of unreasonable demands. They come to class and they ask all kinds of impertinent questions, and they say, we will come and whenever we like, and we will not write the exam, and so on. So there is something, there is some general sort of emergence of a youthish category into the political life. But it's not in India. It hasn't had. Let's say there's been no historian has actually concretely pulled out the if there was a presence of youth in that sense. Nobody has done anything which shows what was its scope, how big was it, how powerful was it, and so on. But in spite of that, there is all kinds of evidence, and you can say that Bhagat Singh is somebody. Bhagat Singh and this whole group of people, they are working with this concept. They are actually thinking of youth as concretely as a political category, and they are opposing what they consider as youthful ideals to the ideals being propagated by Gandhi in this movement. And so he explains this bomb. So they go to the Central Legislative Assembly as spectators. They sit in the upper stalls where audience, common people are allowed to sit. And from there, they throw a bomb into the hall of the assembly, which explodes. Nobody is killed. Some furniture is damaged, and a few people get mild injuries. Now, their argument is that they deliberately threw it in such a way that it was not meant to kill anybody. It was simply meant to draw attention to their views, to their demands, and so on. That so they said if we wanted to, we could have thrown it on John Simon. Simon being that British official, but he was right there, and so on. So they make but of course they are on trial for it, right? So you can see the thing is, it was not meant to be harmed. And they said after doing so, we did not escape, which also they could have done, which is there's a large group of people, obviously. And we surrendered because we felt our duty was done. Now, another feature of this is that the discourse of this movement is not posing Indian freedom as a freedom as something to do with alien rule alone. That is, the Congress's idea of freedom is freedom from foreign rule, essentially, because they are not thinking about internal changes, right? But this party and this particular set of leaders, including Bhagat Singh, for them, that is not the axis of difference. That is, India has to be free from alien rulers. That is not what they are arguing about. Their argument is about the, they are entirely employing the discourse of labor and capital, the master and, slave. And they are including Indians among the masters. So they are making, British and native, capitalists, landlords and together as one group, as opposed to the people. So that's one of the big changes that you can see here. They also try to say that our motive was different. They are defending them, so they are trying to sort of live, right? So he says that in a court of law, motive should count for something. Since our motive was noble, it should not be. We should not be punished for it. Or at least not punished as severely for it. And they give many examples, like a Gurkha who killed a Marwadi in Calcutta. He says he killed him, but the fact is he killed him because that man was some kind of, molester of women, rapist, right? So while the killing was an offense, the motive was noble, and therefore it was excusable. And so they are trying to. But that's all that has to do with their defense, their attempt to escape the final punishment. Now in this section, in this thing, next reading, this is the time of the 1930, the round table conferences get going in India. The British are organizing. There are two round table conferences. The first of them, this refers to the first of them, which is boycotted by the Congress. Gandhi goes to the next one, but this time he says no, because for various reasons. Because it had to do with was also the who is going, who all are going, and how much. Ambedkar, for instance, he goes to this round table conference. Now, what Bhagat Singh is saying in this article is, he is making a very interesting plea about compromise, and it's a very Leninist argument. Saying the Leninist argument here is, and he cites Lenin to make this argument, which is that as long as you are firmly set on your goal, compromise is a legitimate strategy in a struggle. So he is actually saying, go to the round table conference. We should go to the round table conference. You should not boycott it just because they are not promising that they'll give you Swaraj or they'll give you some full freedom, etc. This idea that you have to have all or nothing, he opposes that, saying you in struggle you have to take what you get. And he quotes Tilak, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, this early pre-Gandhi Congress leader, who says if you are fighting for 16 annas from your enemy, you get only 1 anna. That is, anna is a unit of currency. That is, 16 annas make 1 rupee in the old system, before it became paisa, 100, and so on. He says if you are fighting for 16 annas, but you get only 1, and Tilak's approach is pocket it and fight for the rest. But the moderates saying, will you give us assurance that we will get freedom after this? And if they say, no, we can't give an assurance, then they say, we will not go to the round table conference. This is the Congress. And so the critique, the Bhagat Singh's critique of the Gandhian approach is very harsh here. In Bardoli resolution, that is, we remember that in the Chauri Chaura, when it happened, Gandhi was in Bardoli. And when he heard that these policemen were killed by the agitators, he called off the agitation. That's what is called the Bardoli resolution here. He says, our leaders this is Bhagat Singh's comment. He says, our leaders prefer a surrender to the British than to the peasantry. This is, a very sharp kind of, statement of. Even our great leaders do not dare to take responsibility on their shoulders. That's why every now and then they surrender unconditionally before Gandhi. So this is very much against the kind of methods that Gandhi is introducing into the Congress, and it is a condemnation of those who follow after that and actually leave everything in his hands. The political revolution, he says, does not mean the transfer of state, or more crudely the power, from the hands of the British to the Indian. But to those Indians who are at one with us as to the final goal, or to be more precise, the power to be transferred to the Revolutionary Party through popular support. Now, one of the interesting things about it is that this rhetoric is completely out of proportion to the actual following that this group had. That is, it was not some major group, but they are talking like he's talking like Lenin, like with all the thing behind him. But actually, there isn't. I mean, it's and obviously the fact that they are throwing bombs and killing individuals shows that they are operating on a very small scale. It's a small group of people, but the rhetoric actually gives you the impression that this is really something But what is interesting is that this is happening across the board in small, they are not able to consolidate and become a force, but they are there, it's small. And necessarily because they are weak, they are indulging in terrorist activities rather than any other kind of, they are not able to mobilize in any different way. And the communists also, are not able to come into their own until the 40s, when the Second World War is the moment when communists get legitimacy in India, because the Soviet Union is fighting the war with the Allies, right? So that's when Indian communism actually becomes even though it's been there for a long time, that's when it really first becomes a legitimate force. And once they become legitimate, they become extremely effective in some pockets of in Bengal, in Kerala, in Andhra Pradesh, and some UP and so on, some areas. They become powerful. I mean, they become effective. They are they garner a lot of votes also. But yeah, so this rhetoric is not to be taken to indicate any large mass following. But why? The reason why it's interesting to look at today is that in terms of the calendar images that sell, it is widely, it's generally observed that Bhagat Singh and Subhash Chandra Bose calendars sell many more copies than Gandhi's calendar among the people who buy these calendars on the roadside. And they invariably have these gory images of heads, just chopped off heads, and Durga is holding a head which is bleeding, and Subhash Chandra Bose is being blessed, and all those things. So the violence is built into the calendar image, and they are amazingly popular even today. So what are they going to gain by your revolution for which you demand their sacrifice? That is the peasantry. Talking about the peasantry, he says, what will the peasantry gain by making all these sacrifices? What difference does it make to them whether Lord Reading is the head of the Indian government or Sri Purushottam Das Thakur Das? That is, the foreigner or the Indian. What difference for a peasant if Tej Bahadur Sapru replaces Lord Irwin? How does it make any difference, right? He says the youth movement is the starting point of our program. This is where I thought that the youth question was very explicitly raised here. And of course, he calls himself a revolutionary and says, I'm not a terrorist but a revolutionary, and rejects Gandhi's utopian promise of Swaraj in 1 year, and so on. and this atheism question comes up, right? Interesting. That's what is what he reveals is he comes from a family which has had a previous history of liberal thinking inside the family and so on, and yet he says atheism is not a very common thing, and he gives on both fronts, both in his family where his parents were very liberal, and extremely rationalist in their thinking, but not atheists, right? And at the same time, he gives you other examples of his own comrades in this party, all of whom seem to pray on a daily basis, or have at least have a belief in something, etc. And so he then tries to sort of think about what is this what atheism, first of all, how he became an atheist, and what does it mean that you can be rationalist and Marxist or whatever and continue to have belief, which is of course an Indian paradox, right? One of those Indian things you see all over the place. There are these in the 80s and 70s and 80s and 90s, there used to be a lot of these things in the papers about scientists. So there was a nuclear scientist who was a great devotee of one of these Babas, gurus, these new spiritual leaders. So he spent a lot of his time after his retirement. He became a complete full devotee of this. So this kind of a paradox of rational thinking on the one hand, scientific achievement, not even bad, good scientists who discovered something or the other, and on the other hand, this seemingly this paradox, of belief in some spiritual leader and some and so on. So that kind of a question, because it is persistent question, and so it's interesting that he raises it so early. And he also discusses the idea that a lot of people who when he reveals his atheistic inclinations, they say you are arrogant, you have ahankar, which is arrogance or egoism. So atheism is glossed as a kind of arrogance, a kind of egoism, right? So he's trying to reflect on this and saying what is the reason for calling it arrogance, right? Now, he doesn't take it far enough to discuss his thoughts as philosophical reflection, but one interesting thing that occurs to me in relation to this is the idea that the reference to some third party, third power, a third position, that is something that is above your social context, as one of those things which seems to be a kind of necessity that humanity has not overcome. So there is a kind of sense of the need for belief, right? So transcendence, so the necessity of transcendence. Mustafa Safwan, this Egyptian-born psychoanalyst, interesting character, who wrote a book called "Why Are the Arabs Not Free?" He talks about Egypt especially, but the entire Arab world, and talks about how, why is it that the despots keep coming back? The institutions of democracy are all there, but all the time some despot comes and occupies that seat and never gives up, and military and this combination. And he has all kinds of explanations, one of which touches on language as an explanation, where the separation of the classical language from the spoken language is maintained in Arab countries. This is in all Arab countries. They retain. So the classical Arabic is intelligible to everybody in the Arab world. But spoken Arabic in Egypt is not intelligible to the people of Syria or to the people of Tunisia. So, so basically he says it's like the same thing as, say, Latin and Spanish and Italian. So both Italians and Spanish people may know Latin, but Italians may not understand the Spanish people. Right? It's like that kind of a, in India you can say Gujarati, Bengali to some extent, and Hindi. These are languages which have a lot of, which have a Sanskritic origin, but they are not mutually intelligible. The duality of language, between the classical and the spoken, the colloquial or the demotic, right? The vernaculars, yeah. So that's one of the things he's talking about. And the other thing he's talking about is precisely this necessity of transcendence. What is the transcendence? For instance, in the European context, when the democracies, which are associated with the death of the king, right? The church is sort of the death of God and the beheading of the king. These are the two events of the European modernity. So, what is the question there is, what is transcendence then? So is Europe a place where transcendence is no longer a feature of society? And is it because transcendence continues to be a feature of Asian society or Egyptian or whatever the society, that there is the distinction? Is that that the idea of power, the idea of sovereignty has not undergone that transformation? Or Mustafa Safwan's question is there some other way in which transcendence continues to feature in European society also? Right? These are the two. So in other words, a translation of the transcendence into another idiom, another way that it might continue to operate. So whatever it is, it seems that in this Indian context, this essay on atheism, this is a very small essay, it's not as deeply reflective, but it raises very interesting questions, especially the thing about his preoccupation with, why do they say I'm arrogant? Why do they say that atheism is egoism? It's an interesting, sort of question to pursue. And on his own idea as to what God is, he says, my own idea is that having realized the limitations of man, his weaknesses and shortcomings having been taken into consideration, God was brought into imaginary existence to encourage man to face boldly all the trying circumstances, to meet all dangers manfully, and to check and restrain his outbursts, etc. So this is a very instrumentalist way. People felt the need, so they created God. So, right. Now, anyway, so the skipping the Toba Tek Singh story, I want to go to this other figure who is also an interesting figure for us to think about. This is Subhash Chandra Bose. Again, he starts in the Congress. He actually joins the Congress. Gandhi is quite fond of him in the beginning. In the late 30s, he actually becomes president of the Congress on 2 consecutive occasions. And on one occasion, he wins the presidentship over Gandhi's candidate. And Gandhi does not like it. So, he feels so constrained, the Gandhi's opposition, hostility is so, he finds it so difficult to operate that he gives up the, thing. Now you can see here in this image, which I can't expand unfortunately, you can see that there is a gallery of heroes in which he is a part. On the left top is, of course, our Bhagat Singh, the hat, right? And on the to the right side is this is another hero of old, Rana Pratap Singh. Then there is Shivaji, who is now also a big icon of both Maharashtrians and the Hindus, right? That is, blessings of Bharat Mata, with Subhash Chandra Bose receiving. And Bharat Mata is in chains. You can see that she is shackled. Her hands, arms are, in chains. And the legend on this thing, are you an Indian? Then stand before this monument a minute. Here was planted on British Indian soil the first flag of independent India in 18th March 1944. This is Subhash Chandra Bose, who goes abroad and with Japanese help, he even asks for Hitler's help. But Hitler is not yet ready to think about India. He's got a lot more to conquer before that, I guess. But he sets up this Indian National Army, and it has a strong base in Singapore. And from there, with Japanese help, he launches an attack on British India to evict the British, to capture India, to recover India back from. So he lands in this northeastern place. But of course, after that, the war ends, and he's not. Japan. Actually, he's supposed to have died in the skies over Taiwan. That he was flying, to Japan when his plane blew up and died. When he was, huh?
Immortal for Bengali.
Yeah. There are people in Bengal who believe that he's still alive. It's like the Elvis Presley type of thing, There are people who actually, threaten anybody who says that Subhash Chandra Bose is dead. They used to. I think now it's difficult. Now here is another image, Gandhiji, father of our nation. There, so you can see that Gandhi and Nehru looking a bit not so active, are standing quite outside and Subhash Bose is occupying the center. And of course, there's a lion there to signify his prowess. And it says, Chalo Delhi. It says, go to the march to Delhi. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose, obviously, the tensions between him and Gandhi arose because he was arguing that in the Second World War was beginning, the tensions were in the air. He says, this is the moment to strike. The British are not in a position to counter any movement we start at this point because they are too preoccupied with European events. And this is the moment to strike, to win freedom. Gandhi, of course, says we don't win freedom like that, And Gandhi, throughout the war, Gandhi actually, mobilizes, soldiers, recruitment, assists in the recruitment of Indian soldiers for the war effort, saying, this is a just war and therefore, so he suspends the non-violence argument in order to actually ask Indians to enlist in the army and so on. So this particular argument is the source of the tension between, and the reason why Gandhi backs off from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, whom he liked and whom he pushed up, in the early days, differs with him. And so Subhash Chandra Bose, finding himself isolated, goes and starts talking to these fascist forces across, and actually becomes, some kind of minor supporter, ally of the Axis powers in order to launch this attack with the help of this Indian National Army, which at best might have had us, some people say it's fairly significant considering that it was entirely a foreign, put together on foreign soil, not in India, and that if it had actually made an entry, it would have then, gathered strength and so on. But whatever it is, those are for historians to determine. But these are some of the ways in which you can see that all the opposition to Gandhi were tended to be incoherent in this fashion. There was an interesting thing that the revolutionary sort of thing that Bhagat Singh and others stood for. You read what he writes. He writes with reason. With he has arguments. He can that it was not that they lacked reason behind their thinking, but in India it was not possible somehow, it seems, to get this across and win against the Gandhian sort of fortress. It was without Gandhi's support, nothing was possible in that sense. And so they become incoherent. They go, suddenly Subhash Chandra Bose, who is, who had some kind of a left image in in the Indian political scene, goes and seeks Hitler's assistance and so on. So basically, essentially, all of these alternatives to Gandhian nationalism proved to be incoherent. They just sort of collapse into irrationality or incoherence, and I mean, again, Indian National Army, which is the army set up by Bose for reconquering India from the British, is now become in retrospect, the Indian state recognizes this as a great freedom effort in the freedom struggle and so on. So they are all sort of rehabilitated as figures of Indian national history, but they remain in that way. So the incoherence of it, the failure of these kinds of efforts to so you have now three examples, we can say, of opposition to Gandhi within the Indian context. Two of them actually within the Congress to some. So you have Ambedkar, you have and Bhagat Singh as Bhagat Singh is a representative of this kind of revolutionary formation prior to and outside of the Communist Party, which is different. And then you have somebody like Subhash Bose, right? These are the 20th century figures. I'm leaving out, say, Tagore, whose opposition did take place in the 20th century, but who in some ways was arguing from a different kind of sensibility. And it was mostly as a sensibility that Tagore, is of importance, because he was not an active politician like these others, right? So in the political realm as such, you have these three figures now, Ambedkar, Bose, and Bhagat Singh, as instances of a kind of different kinds of opposition mounted. Now, which is something we should keep in mind when we talk about Nehru, because in some ways Nehru represents, you could say, a kind of opposition, but not so. Nehru has things in common with this opposition, but he is not opposition. There's an interesting way in which Nehru's historical position is that he's unique. Why does Nehru succeed? And so on. But anyway, that we'll come to next. Afterwards, that is next week. Yeah. So that is the main material for us to discuss today. The question of these oppositions and what they stood for, why they did not succeed, and the question of the youth movement, and the question, if you like, of the reason, and that's the atheism question, right? So reason is, can reason prevail as a political principle in Indian context? That is the question basically. That is it possible to mount a political sort of movement based on rational principles, right? That is, these modern kind of movements, which say, is basically to do with equality and liberty and all of these values, right? Because Gandhi is in some ways managing the Congress movement by allowing that to function. So, Congress effectively is using that rhetoric of equality, liberty, workers' rights, etc. But it has a kind of it is bounded by the Gandhian restraint, if you like. Gandhi is providing the entire discourse of equality, and the radical discourses, the radical political discourses of 20th century are all present in the Congress, but with this, cover. So those kinds of issues we will. This story was just to include some creative responses to the question of freedom, but it has to do with, of course, our time of partition. Manto, Saadat Hasan Manto, wrote in Urdu, mostly wrote short stories and some reminiscences which are very interesting. He lived in Bombay and wrote some screenplays, and the film industry. He had some really. He knew everybody in the film industry, so his memoirs of the Bombay film industry are of great interest. But his stories, I think twice, if I am not mistaken, and in India and in Pakistan, he was tried for obscenity. He went through obscenity trials. And this other great Urdu writer, Ismat Chugtai, she also went and was tried. So, in fact, Ismat Chugtai has memoirs in which she describes one event where they are both sitting in court, both facing obscenity charges, and sort of gossiping, whispering to each other, and then saying, after this, let's go shoe shopping and so on, and they're kind of sitting in court where they are being tried for obscenity. But this, and he was a very bold writer, I must say, for those times, because he wrote about the lives of the wretched, the lives of people who are outsiders, prostitutes, all kinds of, marginal figures and so on. But this one, and obviously insane, the insane are among his preoccupations. And so this story is a very funny story. The exchange, when India was partitioned, there's obviously this whole question of exchange. Now, the tragic part of it is the exchange of women. This was an amazing story, which is that long after partition, people say women who were raped and who then were abandoned by their families, because a raped woman is like, what you might say, polluted, right? And so the family, the traditional Hindu family, or even, I don't know, any Muslim family or Hindu, for them it becomes a kind of, it's not that the family has to do it, even the women themselves feel that, because they are ideologically sort of already in that kind of thinking. Indoctrinated, yes. So often what has happened in that thing, and a lot of the research which was done mostly in the 80s and afterwards by feminists in India, they talk about these attempts to find these women and bring them back. The families now want them back at a later stage. They are now looking to, but they have then settled down there because they have found Muslims there or Hindus here or Muslims here or whatever, and settled down. And sometimes even they just married the rapist, it's a partition time. It's a time of generalized violence. People are killing each other and so on. So they've made their choices. They've done whatever, right? and then of course this exchange program is based on the insistence that if they are Hindu and in Pakistan they should come back, and if they are Muslim and they belong to Pakistani families they should go there, and so on. So which is not always suitable to that person in this time, right? Regardless of the fact that an injustice, a great violence was done at some time. The time, 20 years, 30 years have passed, and there's a new situation for them, and so on. So it's the whole thing was very tragic and very poignant kind of narrative of how lives unfold in the wake of extreme violence and so on. So that is one kind of exchange with very grim and gruesome kind of revelations about life and so on. But this is another thing. So Manto, with his characteristic irreverence, he says that the Indian government and the Pakistani government decided to exchange mad people. So they say that the Hindu insane in Pakistan will be brought back, and the Muslim crazies will be sent to Pakistan, and so on and so on. So you have this story in which these people are saying, so where are we now, and where are we going to go? Am I in Pakistan? But how can I be in Pakistan? Yesterday I was in India, and so on. So this whole, and there is this one figure, this is Toba, the guy who comes from Toba Tek Singh, a place, but who himself is known by that name, although his name is different, who he just cannot countenance this whole, he's not clear where, and all kinds of things are happening. People are climbing up in mountains and say, for trees, and saying, I won't go anywhere, I will stay here, and so on. So Bishan Singh and this friend Fazal Deen, who was obviously in Pakistan. So it says, he says your family is fine. They are in India. They have gone to India. So this means that they are in Pakistan now. Bishan Singh. So Bishan Singh, I'm on page 7 of this story. Bishan Singh kept quiet. Fazal Deen continued, your family wanted me to make sure you are well. Soon you will be moving to India. What can I say except that you should remember me to Bhai Balbir Singh, Bhai Wadhwa Singh and Bhai Bahan Amrit Kaur. Tell Bhai Birbir Singh that Fazal Deen is well by the grace of God. These are messages sent for those Hindus who went away, or the Sikhs who went away to India after partition, saying, this Fazal Deen is a Muslim in Pakistan who is now aware that this Bishan Singh is going to go, is going to be transferred to India. And so he's sending messages to his old Hindu friends who have gone away. So Bishan Singh took the gift and handed it to one of the guards. The Fazal Deen has brought him a gift. So then he says, where is Toba Tek Singh? He says, it's where it has always been. Then he says, India or Pakistan? He is also not sure. He says, India. Then he says, no, in Pakistan. And then this story, one of the things about it, this nonsense verse, which this man keeps repeating, whenever he grumbles, and he says, Upar de Guru Guru de annex de Beidi Dayana the Mungdi Dal de Pakistan and Hindustan Dur Fitte Mon. It has no, there is no sense. There are only some words which are intelligible, but the thing in its entirety is completely meaningless. So meanwhile, the exchange arrangements were being finalized. Lists of lunatics had been exchanged, and buses. So then the next step is buses of Hindu and Sikh lunatics, accompanied by armed police, etc., began moving out of Lahore towards Wagah. Wagah is the border area, so some people refuse to leave. Some of them are trying to run away, and so on. And then So Bishan Singh is brought. So he says, he asks, so where is Toba Tek Singh, in India or Pakistan? So the official says Pakistan, and then he laughs. So Bishan Singh tries to run, but is overpowered by the Pakistani guards who try to push him across the dividing line towards India. So he says he wouldn't move. He says, this is Toba Tek Singh is here, and so on. And they try to say, they, of course, being a lunatic, they have to tell him something to make him go, right? They don't have to tell him the truth, and so on. And then there is the other guy who had been standing on his legs for 15 years, screamed, and as officials rushed towards him, he collapsed to the ground. There, behind barbed wire on one side, lay India, and behind more barbed wire on the other side lay Pakistan. In between, on a bit of earth which had no name, lay Toba Tek Singh. So, this is a deliberate mockery of the whole partition exercise, right, in this story. Anyway, a great story. One of the few, in fact, till the 80s, one of the things that was noticed was there was not much attempt to write about partition. Not many people actually wrote anything about partition. There was just, huh?
Urvashi, calling for women, Urvashi, rather about partition and
Urvashi. No, Urvashi is among those people who talked about the women, the partition. Yeah. No, that is all recent.
Recently, no.
Yeah, that's all 90s, 80s.
When was this written?
This was written 50s, 40, 50, just after,
It's
50.
exactly the same story Chatterjee quoted.
Yeah. Chatterjee quote.
Same
Yeah.
story.
National versus regional. Now, in the case of Ambedkar, we saw that actually there is a social sort of constituency that Ambedkar wants to represent. He wants to represent, he's coming as a representative of the depressed classes or the untouchables. So in that sense, his field of political operation is narrow, right? He's not he's not sort of challenging Gandhi's or Congress's on that national question. He's saying, I speak for these people and their interests. Now, similarly, one of the things is, as the Kunal's material which I showed you, demonstrates, in spite of Bhagat Singh's presence as a iconic figure all over India, he is still very much a regional figure. Belongs to that region of Punjab and Haryana, roughly two-state sort of region. And even today, the continuing sort of new kinds of mobilizations which are based on, which are sort of use Bhagat Singh as an icon, are confined to that region. Subhash Bose again is a national figure, but essentially a Bengali figure. So he's, and his party, he started the party apart from the Indian National Army. He actually launched a party which he called the Forward Bloc after he was disillusioned with the Congress. And interestingly, Forward Bloc today exists only in two states. One is Bengal, where he comes from, very minor party, but even there was Bengal, and the other is Tamil Nadu, south, in the deep south. And the reason for that is that the Forward Bloc attracted membership from Indians who were living in places like Burma, Malaysia, and so on. And a lot of Tamilians, business people, merchants, they were residents of these, outside of India proper, wherever there was British presence. So Burma was one place, And it's for that reason that even today a very minor sort of presence of forward bloc is there in southern Tamil Nadu, in the southern India, in the state of Tamil Nadu. So the point being that somehow the difference between national leadership and regional leadership seems to again and again come, as a very a strong kind of separation, and essentially that is what separates Gandhi and Nehru and people of that state from all of these others who are trying to challenge Gandhian leadership. They have to win a position at the national level by being able to attract mass following for themselves, but already those who have some mass following have got it via Gandhi, not otherwise. That is, say, Subhash Bose. No mass following outside of Bengal, other than what comes through the Congress association with the Congress party, and essentially that means Gandhi's leadership. So a lot of narratives, there are many figures in Indian politics whom you can say start off in the Congress, disagree with Gandhi or some other Congress program, but once they break with it, they end up becoming regional force, regional presence. They no longer can maintain that national. So the nation, the Indian nation as a space of politics is completely under the dominance of the Gandhian formation. And that is where those who succeed finally from the regions are those who ally with them. So you have great regional leaders, Sardar Patel from Gujarat, Rajgopal Achari from Tamil Nadu, Prakasham from Andhra Pradesh, and various leaders from Bengal and so on. They are all finally people who worked with Gandhi. Once they break, they become regional leaders, as was demonstrated in the case of Prakasham. Prakasham was a very prominent leader in the Congress, but essentially he broke with the Congress and became Andhra leader, the state leader. And so you have repeatedly these kinds of things. And what is interesting about it is that within the regions, there is a kind of what you might call classic formation of bourgeoisie happening. That is small scale, there is some industry and some new kind of sensibilities are developing, and those are more trying to work within the British system to develop autonomy for the provinces. But the big bourgeoisie in India, that is the business classes of the Birlas, Tata, the Parsi business people, the Marwadi business people, etc., they are firmly behind Congress. They are with the Congress. And this is, either they are with the Congress or they are with the British. And so that formation of British versus Congress is basically dominates the national scene. And it has to be sort of taken into consideration in order to really understand the Indian situation, that this polarity, this kind of dichotomy is a very significant, and it is virtually impossible for anybody to rise and become a leader at the national level without compromising, allying with the Gandhian position. It's just not. So what is the difference? Why is Gandhi able to succeed when these others can't succeed? And that is one of the big mysteries of the whole Indian thing, because Gandhi alone succeeded to be a Indian leader. He is the leader of India. Nobody else is a leader of India. Jawaharlal Nehru is a leader because he submits to Gandhi's leadership, right? So everybody else either go with him and survive or get pushed back into the regions. And this is continue even today. It continues to be the case that it's very difficult for anybody outside of the Congress, and you know, today the new party which has come to challenge the Congress is the BJP, the Hindu Nationalist Party. Now they have succeeded to some extent, and nowadays we have a new leader on the horizon called Narendra Modi, who is part of this Hindu Nationalist Party and who is known primarily for his genocidal sort of attack on the Muslims of Gujarat in 2002, one of the worst episodes of violence in recent history. And he is now the emergent leader, and you know, a lot of people are now predicting that he is the future Prime Minister of India. So they are using Hindutva, that is Hinduism. So Hinduism is obviously something that is common to a lot of these regional nationalities, right? Gandhi was not using Hindutva in this way. He was against any exclusive Hinduism, but he was also using a Hindu iconography, as it were, right, without the Hindu nationalism. But he was doing something more. He was appealing for some other kind of sense of belonging, whatever it is, and we'll have to think about that. But it's a fact that until this Hindutva came into existence, Gandhi and the Congress were the dominant force in India. Every other force gets limited to one state, two states, and so it's not able to break. The only other force which actually had a larger presence is the communists. But the communists today are no longer hold that. In fact, in India there is this more or less official distinction between national party and regional party, political parties. The distinction is based on how many seats you win in how many states. If you have a significant number of seats in more than two states or more, then you are called a national party. But if your presence is only in one state or lower, you are called a regional party. Communists. So the only national parties: the Congress, the BJP, the Hindu Nationalist Party, and the Communists. These are the only three. So you have an idea as to the nature of this formation. It also explains why in the early days there was when the Communist Party came into existence in India, there was a conflict between those who wanted to stay within the Congress and be a left interest group in the Congress, as opposed to having a separate party. In fact, there is a thing called Congress Socialist Party. This is a left group within the Congress. They stay within the Congress, and so Congress actually was an umbrella party in which there were many smaller parties, Swaraj Party, and the Congress Socialist Party, etc. Because they were lobbying within the party for their interests, depending on your whether you're left inclined or centrist or right, etc. In fact, the international communists oppose the idea of a Congress Socialist Party, that is, being socialist within the Congress. It's not acceptable. But finally, when the International Communist Party approves of it, it says it's better to be within the Congress. And so the Congress Socialist Party acquires a kind of legitimacy. But they stay separate finally. Communist Party comes, as I said, in the 40s, they come into much more, they get officially recognized and they become legitimized after that. And after that, it becomes difficult to ban them, because they were banned earlier in the 30s and so on in India. So that is one of the issues that can be brought into the reckoning when we talk about these figures. all of these different leaders from here and there who came up, but who never quite, as I said, they just collapsed into incoherence because they were not able to sustain and actually mobilize across India. And one of the major questions to be posed to that whole phenomenon is it because it is not a nation? That is, to mobilize, one of the things is you have to have something in common. Now, as I said, the BJP catches the one thing that is in common for a large majority, which is Hinduism. Congress is against, in principle, against using religion as a basis for political mobilization. Gandhi uses Hinduism in a particular way which is not Hindu nationalist, but just a affirmation of Hindu order, as we saw, caste system is a good thing and all those things, but Hindus and Muslims and all should live together. He has an idea of a coexistence, right? That's the plank of the Congress. So on some basis, there is, it seems that religious basis is somehow a religious kind of appeal is an essential part of mobilizing on a larger scale in India. That other than that, you have the nationalities tend to be very much confined to them, their own, leaders. If you are a leader from a particular nationality, from Punjab, from Andhra, from Tamil Nadu, from Bengal, you tend to by and large remain confined. Your sphere of influence is there and not beyond that, unless you are using religion in some fashion, different ways, So there is a secular way of using religion also, and there is a Hindutva way that the BJP is now pursuing, and so on. So otherwise, in effect, actually in India, you have a very much a political kind of a morphology problem. The morphology question is, this nation, is it a historically necessary form, or can it be transcended? Rabindranath Tagore kept on saying, initially he was thinking, for him, he first wants to say India is something else, it's not a nation. And therefore, we have to approach it in this particular way. He had a concrete plan for it, right? So his plan was based on the idea that Bengal is a nation, Punjab is a nation, but those have to come together. They have to form their regional, provincial things, solidarities, and then create a center. So you from the below you mobilize, gather, establish links, alliances, and then create a center, which will then be the common thing, that everybody has chosen, as opposed to the idea that there is an India which overrides all other provincial considerations, and that will then be the basis of unity, which means that if you take that line, it means that regional aspirations are essentially divisive. That means they are not conducive to unity. So you tend to say, regions should not speak up. They should not, have their own demands and so on. But effectively in India, what we have seen is regions keep on making new demands. Regions go on saying, we want this and we want that, and and for instance, this Telangana, this state formation struggle that's going on in my region, it's been a case of tension between center and region for the last 10 years. And it's not the first time, it keeps coming and going. It was there in the 40s, it was there in the late 60s, now again it's come back. So it's like that. So we have, everything seems to be somehow this kind of constant vacillation between the dominance of the national, the Indian national, versus the claims of the regions which think of themselves as nationalities, and so on. So in that sense, this this history is as of some retrospectively one can understand that there was some difficulty for leaders from one region to succeed in another region, and it was more or less almost airtight, these provincial sort of formations, and yet there were people like Gandhi who transcended it. Right? So that's the context in which I think these people should be.
I think one very interesting puzzle. Why the Indian talking about themselves never on race lines?
Never?
Race lines.
Race.
There's so many different, not only language, but the blood, everything. But race is not a
Race.
in
It's
either
interesting.
culture, social, or political.
Yeah.
Why?
No, yeah.
It's very easy to use this as some kind of
But India has no racial purity. No, there is no racial identity to India,
So the nation, it is not, the nation states nation, means doesn't want to wipe out all the minor nation in terms of race.
No,
So
no.
race is not a problem.
No, race has never featured. I mean, Tagore, interestingly, used race to say the reason why India is not a nation is because it is this multiplicity of races. People have come, across so many layers of, immigrations, from various parts, over many centuries, millennia, and so you have a mix, which cannot be. There is nothing, pure, left in this, And in fact, then he says that India is, because the race problem was at its height in Europe. So Rabindranath Tagore actually says India can actually, possibly provide a solution to the race problem for the world.
Yes.
Huh?
So is it true that Tagore himself doesn't buy the myth of nation state? And he thinks nation state is a bad thing because he want to make a state only have a one nation, so you have all the problem in Europe.
Yeah.
So you don't have it in India.
Well,
And so you divide this nation state myth. Never believe the British is only one race. So you don't make India now.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very different from all the other third world countries.
Yeah.
All the third world countries want to pretend they have nations. So they have a genocide or whatever.
No, but in India, there are people who don't want to treat India as a nation state because it is much more than that and therefore it's difficult. But effectively, the Indian state treats it as a nation, and that's where the conflicts arise. Yeah. So there is that tension between, on the one hand, it is claimed that it's a nation. Hindutva, the BJP party, claims that this is one nation.
So this is the problem of Hindutva.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Hindutva is by the myth of nation state,
Yeah.
which is not Indian.
Yeah.
By nature.
So my own reading of Tagore is to say that Tagore both accounts for and transcends nation, because he sees Indian reality as a complex reality, where there are nations, but they are not in that position in which the European nation states are. They are part of a larger formation, which is India, right? So that is why he is thinking of a two-tier solution to India's political problem. That is, the province, actually what he calls the province, is where the nationality will consolidate its community existence. Because first of all, community existence has to be there, right? So this problem is that community is, you see, what is the modern question is, you have caste as a community, right? So you have a village as a community. So community is a small thing. In a monarchy, community is a small thing. That is, you in your local, in your place, you have a community, but once you go out to the capital city, there is no community. There is some other place. It's different. But in the nation moment, in the modern moment, the idea is that the nation is a community. So this community is now expanding to be a large thing, isn't it? So Tagore recognizes that that first of all you have to break the smaller communities, that is caste communities in India. You have to break them. Tagore is not has no illusions about it. But if you break it, what do you have next? So on that question there are two answers. One is you break the community, but the larger community is India. That is huge. I mean, and that is unrealistic, right? So Tagore's model, yeah, I mean, there is no commonality between the south and the north and the east and the west and so there's just innumerable. Tagore's thing provides for that intermediate national community formation, which will be the basis of a creation of a larger entity. That's why he's saying it's a solution to a problem. He knows that there is a problem. That to be modern, which for him is a requirement. He is not shying away from the modern social transformations, but how to do it in this particular so complicated place? It's just it's too many things going on.
Well, it seems to me it's why exactly Gandhi succeeds as a national leader, because what he has been applied is something what can be explained as a particularity in universality, or he just actually somehow, I believe he was very pragmatic politician.
Yeah.
So we just avoid these questions or those problems that was dividing, and just stay on the level where those commonalities among those Indians from the north or from the south. It was possibly somehow the living style and so on. So, or the common refusal of the English rule. Do you understand what I mean? Because
Yeah.
as we have been taught here, the nation has to be built in some way. But because of the Indians' historical and religious settings, it seems to be almost impossible to build, as you mentioned, the myth of the nation for India.
No, this is true. That's pragmatically he adopted that thing. But so basically, what you have as a defining feature of India is a conflict between two models of the whole. India as a whole, there are two models of the whole. One is a vertical division of the entire Indian population on religious lines, Hindu and Muslim. That is one idea of the whole. What is India as a whole? It consists of two major religions and other smaller religions. So Hindu and Muslim. Basically, India is about Hindus and Muslims, right? This is what the British believed. This is what Congress and Muslim League together, their division itself is a division which is based on that belief, and that is the belief on which the BJP is founded, right? And that whole. The other belief which you see in the Tagorean model is that India is divided horizontally into nationalities which have to find a way of building something together.
Confederation.
Yeah. So that these two models are still in conflict in India. It continues to this day. Non-residents.
What were the distinctions along these two lines, these two models?
NRI, at that time, NRI is not a great presence. There are some groups outside. Different types of groups are there. There's some radical presence outside called Gadar Party and all those things. But very minor things. And a lot of Indians in Britain are basically lobbying, in Parliament, British Parliament, and so on. Then in the east there is a lot of Indian presence. As I said, the Mudaliar, the business communities of South India, who there in large numbers in Burma, Malaysia, Singapore, all those areas, and who actually form a kind of who support the Subhash Chandra Bose's thing, the forward bloc and so on. So they see, well, it's an interesting thing. It actually has something to do with the business history of India. India is Indian business communities and their worldwide presence. Indian business communities have a long history of presence in the different parts of the world. Throughout Asia, they are trading in Arab countries on the one hand. They are trading on the eastern with the east on the other hand. And then with after the entry of British, they get new avenues in Africa. Wherever there is a British colony in Africa, Indians are now find a new avenue. So Africa, Western Asia, East Asia, these are all and interestingly, the Western Indian community from which Gandhi essentially, in South Africa, what is Gandhi doing? He is representing the business community of Gujarati origin in South Africa. And to some extent, even after coming back to India, he continues to represent that, that community to some extent, even as becomes a national leader. Whereas it seems the southern, see, that's the thing, why did the southern, there is the southern business communities, they are very powerful communities, but they are trading in the east. To some extent, they have minor presence in Africa also, but majorly they are in the east. And when Subhash Bose starts the forward bloc, they join the party, because for them there is some other interest in maintaining their interests in Burma and other places, as well as India, their particular interest in Indian sort of freedom and so on. So in that sense, it's another angle from which to study India, which I have not done. I am just saying that your question brings it up for me, which is the different sort of roles played by different business communities of different regions of India, who are all had a presence outside India. So in that sense, they were, as business communities, they had long-standing relations with the outside world, not new something. And in fact, they the British and the other European powers in India, to begin with, these business communities are the ones who are lending them money to fight these wars, which they won and conquered India.
Can we come back to?
Yeah.
I mean, could you think you put him here, and this person died very, very, very young.
Yeah.
Right, 24.
Yeah.
Right, and he also suggested this is the first time in Indian political history. So seeking the freedoms not only from alien rule, completely,
Yeah.
this is a turn to capital and labor, right?
Yeah.
And Communist Party and so on wasn't formed.
Was just about the formation,
Yeah.
25, but it's not
He died in 1931.
31, yeah.
Right? And so on. But this is obviously the sort of taking the Marxist line. But I don't know how to, because given the discussion already going on, sort of Congress, a lot of the elements sucked in by Congress, right?
Yeah.
And so on. But one thing difficult to understand is the Indian left-leaning politics, which seem to be really, really complicated. Right? Not only the communists, but the Lenin, Maoists and so on emerging.
Maoists, yeah, much later.
on.
Yeah.
Right?
Anarchists at this time.
Yeah.
Anarchists.
Yeah. Anarchist is quite obvious.
Yeah, anarchist thought is there. Even in Gandhi, there is some anarchist thought, and of course, this formation, this Hindustan, this Bhagat Singh's party, it's a very, it's very difficult to call it, characterize it. It's not communist in any strict sense. It's not. It doesn't have party, that kind of a thing. It's a formation which has different types of thought, which has sort of. Influenced them, and they are working on a very small scale. They are not into mass mobilization to start with, because on that platform Gandhi is already a powerful presence. So in other words, you are not mass mobilization itself has become a different thing after Gandhi. You can't do it in a way, right? Because you do mass mobilization by anybody else means taking on the Congress. It's and obviously the only ones who took on Gandhi on that front were the Muslim League, led by Jinnah, because they were now trying to, so you could have Muslim rallies calling Muslims to a rally challenge Congress's claim to represent the Muslims. Or to some extent you could call the untouchables and so on, right? Saying on a different plank to say, we are not actually getting equal treatment or something like that. But not on that, you can't, compete with Congress anymore, at that level of its presence across the nation. This is important. So they are by definition reduced to these kinds of localized presences, even though their rhetoric may be on a same front, because Congress allows everybody to speak as if they are speaking to all of India. It's also there, right? So you can talk like, you can be just your presence may be only confined to your region, but the way you talk, it might be, because that's what Congress enables you to do, because you have also risen with the Congress. You have got, you've been through the Congress machinery or whatever, the mill and so on. So it's a peculiar way in which Congress actually processes individuals into national positions, rhetorically speaking, or at least subjectively speaking. They come to think of themselves as all India figures, right? National Indians. But the reality is that they are not. That if they, yeah, they can't. Yeah, this is this.
But if we limit to the intellectual thought for the moment, and place at the center historically,
Yeah.
right? And then what would be the line or sort of genealogical traces of intellectual thought before and after? Yeah.
Well, genealogically, see, the sources of left thought are completely obscured. There is no, like where did, how did they, read Lenin and so on, So there is literature coming in, and it's the 20s, late 20s, it's a.
The Communist Youth League or this anarchist mode of this youth group. I think it's international.
International, yeah. So there is something going on.
In the 20s, there are similar formations of this youth league or group.
Youth leagues, yeah.
Yeah, in Japan, in China, in
Yeah.
Taiwan, and of course also Europe.
Yeah.
But there are different forms. They are also fascist youth
Right, they are fascist youth leagues and so on.
but
Yeah.
also communists and the anarchists. They
Yeah.
actually are from different
Right.
sources, background, inspirations. Yeah. But it's interesting that only in the 20th century there's a youth, emphasis of the youth emerged, but it's not so that much in
19th.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. There is that one moment, but that moment is very much a local thing. In Calcutta, there's a vibrant sort of moment of youth, sort of consolidation. but that quickly passes. After that, this is the first time, and this is a very different kind of youth identity that's being coming, and it has these international sort of precedents.
Yeah, because there's as you said, there's the idea, then it could interpolate.
Yeah.
They follow the similar trend.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not only the idea, I don't know what goes on in actual organizing work. Because later on, this term used, I think the post-war or even recently gets transformed into the student movement, or
Yeah.
the youth movement, right? And you can imagine, I mean, in that sense, student were one of the sites in the school to be organized, which you cannot organize, youth, elsewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it has something to do, with those. Especially he's talking about to students, his conference, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so on, before to Punjab, students.
Yeah. Punjab students. Yeah.
So-
it's a lot. 20年代 in the 20th, the post-war is only a follow-up of the pre-war.
Yeah, I know, but
situation.
whether this moment was speaking to students,
Yeah, students.
that's what I mean. So
Before.
youth, in fact, interpolates students as a new category, right? But actual organizing cannot depart from the thought as a category, right? So what does that mean? That's what I'm trying to see whether that's really the case. Huh?
But was it really a new category, or a new phenomenon? Because actually here we are speaking about 1920s, but if we see on the other part of the Asia, the youth was usually utilized for the armed struggle, possibly because they are still young
Mobilized.
and more easily to be mobilized.
Yeah.
So even in 1908 or 1910s in Vietnam, they already constituted the Young League, who was actually the most violent element in the national struggles.
But that's also there in India, but it's not, doesn't take the character of the youth movement, but it is a young people's movement, which is the Swadeshi, that period. There is a lot of terrorist activity. There's a violent sort of boycotts and all that, which are meant to, which turn violent, essentially. But this is.
Seems to me that the professor is somehow correct, because in the 1920s, most of these people are influenced by left.
Yeah.
Left, so.
No, it's in the wake of the revolution, so the whole world is sort of receptive to these ideas. Yeah.
Wasn't it, for example, because that the communist thought will be successful in a particular country, there is a need of existence of the labor class, or of some sort
Peasantry.
Can be,
In the third world, it's mostly peasantry. There's no working class in that.
But even in Vietnam, there was already rising the labor class, and it was actually the bearer of those ideas.
Right.
So wasn't it, as we were speaking during the last class, that actually somehow those castes work against the
solidarity. Yeah. No, obviously that is a very much a factor. We should not forget it. But it is not it's what I'm saying is you have to think about it in relation to this question also, because this is a very important question, which is the possibility of mobilizing for national community formation, right, in this progressivist thing. That is something that accompanies, and historically speaking, it runs parallel to working class mobilization. It is as much, you can say one is the precondition of the other. You see, and that is where that kind of mobilization, which breaks caste barriers in order to create a larger community, is possible in the region. in the nationalities in the regions of India. It's not possible when you think about it at the all India level. All India level you can only work with images, right? And Gandhi is essentially an image for the masses. Gandhi's relation to the masses is not a symbol, in the psychoanalytic terms, it's not a symbolic relation, it's an imaginary relation, right? He's putting forth a certain number of iconic sort of, points of identification, right? And that's the power of it, because it mobilizes already existing modalities of relation between the leader and the led. But why does somebody like Tagore talk the way he did when we read that thing? There are many in different regions who are talking the same language. They are talking about modernizing the language, making the language less classical and more colloquial, using the language of ordinary people to enrich the language, so that and breaking the monopoly of the old scholastic community over the language, writing grammars, introducing it in school, and all kinds of, at this level there is a lot of work going on, right? And that's the place where in a way that counters the caste isolations, language is sort of making them all belong to one thing.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, of course, the nation is some of those authors will say that it's just an imagined community, but it must be built up somehow.
It is. That's what I'm saying. This kind of building up was going on in India, in these different because it can go on only on the basis of language. There is no other basis.
But what about, for example, the common history? That is actually the most important in this, because we can see many nations that have different languages, but actually somehow they succeed in something what they call the building of common history, somehow.
No. Common history is one thing, but to write the common history, you need to have some basis, right? There are very few things where without a linguistic means, language is not the height of it's not ethnicity, it's not race, it's not something. It's a means to something. See, ethnic identity is not a means; it is given fact. Language is a means, a necessary means. Without it you can't operate. That is the difference.
So the European nation is beginning by building up national language.
Yeah.
Actually,
There's a
we also couldn't say that,
Right.
actually the language that is used as a national language, what is it? It just helps people to somehow operate better beyond those other groups. So it can be English in case of India somehow. And on the national level it works, but on the national level it works just among the elites. So why there is still the big gap between the regional and the normal people and the elites? So that's actually a classical case in many of the countries, as I understand. And look on Swiss, look on Belgium. They all have several national languages.
No, but they have several national languages. You see, you have to, as I said, political morphology is an interesting subject, but there is clarity on this issue is necessary. The idea is, let's take what you say, Swiss or Canada, Switzerland. And say Belgium, and so on. The thing is, basically the new form, you say nation state, which means state and nation in a combination, right? This is the governmental form, political form, in which this cultural, ethnic, linguistic or whatever unity finds its political existence. Okay? Now, Canada, Switzerland, Belgium, this is the model. That is, they are all national languages. They are all state languages. And you can do that. Obviously, there is a realistic limit to how many you can have, right? Switzerland has 3 or 4, Belgium has 2 or 3, Canada has 2, right? Now imagine that 25. You can't, it becomes impractical.
So Indonesia, I believe they will have fast many languages.
No, Indonesia has found a solution, right? What Indonesia has done is, so it has all of these, but it has a completely different language to which all these people adhere, and then there is a state. So it's a model. I don't know if it works. It's a model. You have to find a model, right, of coexistence.
But as I understand the Indians case, there's exactly the Indians case.
No, that is what I am trying to tell you. The Indian case has become like I would even okay, yeah. This is it. This is what the Indian case is. But the difference is that this is foreign to all of them. It's some slightly known but not so well known language, which the Dutch were already using to some extent, right? Some very prevalent. So they all said, not my language, not your language, not the third person's language, but this language, which we know to some extent. Here, first of all, this is the effective national language, effective official language, okay? That is in practice. This is what really, so for instance, if you write the constitution, you write it in English, then you translate it into Hindi, and you may or may not translate it into the other languages. Okay, that's may or may not. And if there is a dispute, supposing you have a Hindi constitution and somebody says this word means this in Hindi and it differs from English, then which one has priority? This one. So, this will decide which is the correct version, right? If there is a dispute. Now, so in effectively, education, right? Supposing you say officially that English is our national language, I have no problem. I am not saying there should no, but in that case, you should ensure that every child learns that language. You don't. In India, you don't have that. Because education in the primary level is a function of the states, and the states have bargained through the linguistic reorganization of states that in their state, at the state level, say in L1 will be the official language. So if you want to learn English, nowadays there is a lot of social pressure, so they are teaching English, but it's not well taught. And basically you don't have English. Neither English nor Hindi is known to the vast majority of people outside of that Hindi speaking region. So it's chaos. There is no, so because this is a practical, effective official language, but not a statutorily recognized official language. The India has not sat down and said this will be it, and we will make the necessary arrangements for every citizen to acquire the language. The schools will do it. It's not like that. It's in the state of L1 state, they have their own policy. L5 state, it has its own policy, etc. And then constantly the center is trying to creep into the education system. They will set up central schools as opposed to regional schools. So the central schools will teach English and Hindi, and so they will develop a different kind of sensibility. So they become national citizens. These people are regional citizens, and so on. So you have, it's a combination of formal and informal methods which have resulted in something. So the main thing is, in India, practically a lot of what goes by the name of law or or rule or governmental practice, etc., is informal. It is not, and even when there is something statutory, when it says you must do this in the law books, in the constitution, in practice something else is done. So that's the source of the problem. And this linguistic diversity is something that leads to all kinds of problems, which basically what has happened is that the interests of the center and the people who are invested in the center and the interests of those in the regions, in the states, and they, the people who are in that, they are falling apart. Their interests are different from these interests.
Yeah, because now I'm wondering what can really impose the central state to the region actually. Like, because if they can pass some law, but then the region say no, we'll do as we want. So
yeah.
So I don't see. It's totally.
I'll tell you an example.
They don't have any trust to a central government. That's what I heard from Indian.
Legitimacy.
Central government, they don't really care.
Yeah, they don't care. See, just last year, I'll tell you an example. Last year, the central government education ministry said all medical and engineering college admissions will be based on one common test. Okay, one test for all of India. Now look at the two dimensions of the problem here. Okay, one test, it says. But so far what is happening is each state has a test. Okay, each state has its own test. They said one test, that means they have to cut down their test. Now what happens is, they say in this test they will test you for medical and engineering related subjects plus English or Hindi. These people were able to write their test in Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, Marathi, in which they could use. Now immediately they are at a disadvantage. So the state of Tamil Nadu, which is always a rogue state, which it doesn't like to do, it said we are not participating in this test. So what does the central government do? It says Tamil Nadu is exempted. Then Andhra Pradesh said we don't want this test. So, but Andhra Pradesh has a Congress government. Because central is a Congress government, Andhra is a Congress government. So Congress government is trying to not, make a, because they don't want to confront the center too much, but still they can't help it because there's pressure from students and other lobbying groups. So they also say petition, we don't want it, and so on. Now, okay, this is a conflict, right? But the other thing which the center has done is, without asking, it says one test for everybody, but voluntarily it has exempted the IITs. These IITs are the prestigious, highly funded technical institutions, which are, there are some 7-8 campuses in India. These are where the richest of Indians, the most well-to-do Indians go, get the best of education, highly subsidized, extremely good quality education, and half of them end up as engineers in America. Okay, but this was exempted from this test by the government itself. Because they are too prestigious, they can't be things. So that's the thing. So these are the two dimensions. This is regional thing, and this is what the
It cannot last long. I mean,
huh?
like for me, it's who is in this central government, because it cannot last long. Like if they have no authority, I don't know.
No, but India has survived with this kind of thing throughout this period.
But so why there is no autonomous movement in India? It's because the central government is not actually frightening.
Well, India is sometimes described as a functioning anarchy. So that's also there,
But yeah, but I mean, I don't understand why people are not really pissed off by the
People
central
are,
government.
but the thing is,
Like you don't want them to be paid for nothing, I don't know.
see, the state, there are in the states those whose interests are tied with the center. Right? They are powerful. Nobody wants to lose a huge market and become small market, right? There's no such, thing. The business communities, the industrialists, the people who are looking for resources. For instance, there is gas in one state. Petroleum is or steel, iron ore in another. You want to be able to draw from all that. And so there is a huge amount of vested interest who want, obviously, not to lose out on that. And so the people who are suffering in this kind of situation, see, these people are given exemptions, the elite.
So the central government subsidizes education for the elites, but not for local schools.
Yeah.
No, local schools, government schools are subsidized. I mean, they are free schools. No, that's also that is no. But this is high. This is the government schools are in the worst state. They are not in a very good. But IITs, they are the most prestigious institutions. If at all any Indian institutions make it to these lists of best, it's these. They are
different exam structure. Completely different.
they have finest buildings and facilities, labs, everything you want, they have. But they get exemptions that easily because that's a different class apart. They're meant to maintain those and so on.
Yeah,
So-
it would last as long as there's no severe conflicts between region and region.
Yeah. That's what. But the thing is, regional conflicts keep rising and going down, rising and going down.
So is there, I was thinking, if Gandhi is the image for the nation for the 20th century, could there be a different kind of image to conceive of either nation or either it's in the federal form or...
So far, and this is a bleak situation, and it is the case, and it is most pessimistic kind of thing, but it's true. So far, only the Hindutva party has this is the alternative, and it's produced this new character called Narendra Modi, who is now rising and becoming more and more a prime ministerial prospect, and it's a very scary prospect. But that's the only alternative to Gandhi. That's the only alternative to Gandhi in India, because they work on an ethnic basis, Hindu basis.
But there should be something else, right?
No, that's the thing. Historically speaking, there is nothing else which can unite everybody.
But why shall we unite everybody? Could we have a different regional government and then...
No, but that's so only some social conflict keeps increasing. That kind of a new people will start thinking about alternatives. But so far there is no such. What actually should happen, if you think about history and the history of the national movement and the ideals of the national movement, is the Congress should have taken upon itself the task of putting in place a proper federal structure, like
Yeah, federal.
structure and itself disappeared. It should have disappeared. The Congress, you see, what happened is the Congress became, so it's like the, like the symbol, it became an interest group by in itself. It became a party. It's not supposed to be, party. And it should have actually enabled the new structure to come into existence and dissolved, into the, different units.
And it's why we have to actually, according to me, divide the Indians to the on the elitists or who operate on the national level, and those local people whose interest is actually against not only the interest of the elitists, but also as a nation.
Yeah, so that's the problem. You can't mobilize except in your own region. Nobody has that ability to mobilize beyond, And so in India you have this phenomenon called the third front. Third front means not Congress front, not BJP Hindutva front, the Hindu nationalist front, but a third front means a party from one state, another party from another state, another party from, all these different parties. So it's an incipient kind of federal alliance. But it can never, succeed. It never succeeds in, winning because they are all good in there, but they don't have a commonality of interests, and their only interest is to fight these major national parties. So it doesn't it has never become strong enough to be a third force, proper force.
If they keep on fighting, they are the third.
Right. Yeah.
By itself, right?
Unity, there is no way. There is a lot of difference.
Then they split.
They will
Yeah,
split.
then they'll split. Because they also, some of them will come out of alliances. Sometimes, if it suits them, they'll get into an alliance with the national party.
And in the regional level, they even against each other.
Yeah, they'll be fighting in the region, allying at the national level. It's just,
But Philip, like the language identity is also is a very curious case. Like when the Pakistan formed, and its basis of the religion Pakistan formed. Okay, Pakistan also itself has different nationality. I'm talking about like ethnic or really like linguistic nationality. They are Kashmiri, Baloch, and different language speaking other people. But over there, like Jinnah declared, okay, Urdu will be the national language. That is completely alien to this kind of people. Like Bengali people consist of Pakistan's 54% of the entire population of Pakistan that time, 1947. But they are speaking Bengali. But they are forced to speak Urdu and for a central government control all these things, because Punjabis who are in the dominant position, their also mother tongue is not Urdu, but they adopted the Urdu as a main language and to control, because Urdu was the national identity for Islam in India. It's from 19th century, and because of that, whatever you were saying is like that, and they wanted to control through that linguistic politics and all these things, but it never worked.
So they were not successful in their language.
That's why it's divided.
So they have some another force or unifying force that can help them to unify itself as a region. In the case of Pakistan, it's maybe religious or whatever. There can be many other things. That's what I'm speaking about. That's what I was suggesting.
But if you keen on to too much religion, at that time Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he declared, okay, whoever, it will be a secular country. By the way, Pakistan,
of course,
if you keen on to these things, like first it will be, okay, Muslim only leave.
Can we compare? I think it makes sense more actually with India, Indonesia, are multilingual, and China.
Yeah.
Right? These were the comparable instances beyond Switzerland and so on. It seemed to be Indonesia adopted Bahasa, and the Chinese instead adopt Mandarin, right, in terms of a national language.
Yeah.
But actually, all other languages exist.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even in local tongue, whatever. So, and especially so-called minority language also encouraged rather than suppressed.
So look at how creative writers are responding. But the two figures that I want to talk about today are Bhagat Singh who is a member of a kind of socialist, republican, communist. It's not a very coherent organization, but it is influenced by Marxism, by other kinds of socialistic thought, and so on. And another figure who is even more controversial, which is Subhash Chandra Bose. He is not somebody whose writings are, he is not known for his writings, but he is a major figure in this alternative, people who tried the alternative, people who tried to oppose Gandhi within the Congress, right? There are many who try to do that from this particular point of view, having first been actually Gandhi's, favorites and so on. So that's one, Subhash Chandra Bose. And so we'll look at these two today. Bhagat Singh, image of Bhagat Singh. That's what was most commonly taken as the image of Bhagat Singh. On the left, he is in prison. He is in, he's a Sikh, and so his Sikh, his hair is showing there. Of course, he became an atheist, and so he was, cut his head. But hair. The what I wanted to show is the more recent sort of the attempts to appropriate Bhagat Singh by various people. There are about 7-8 movies made about this figure, and in fact this 2000 in the 2000s, in just 1 year or 2 year period, 3 films were made by three different directors and actors, in color, and basically treating him as a macho hero, like muscle generally. And he, not only him, but also his colleagues, the other well-known revolutionaries that who were part of this team, Chandrasekhar Azad and Ram Prasad Bismil and so on. They were all they all feature in this, and it's essentially about their heroic posture, their what called kshatriya, the idea of power and muscular sort of militaristic sort of idea.
What caste is he?
He is Sikh. Sikh is another religion.
So
No, they do have, it's hard to say, but he is not some lower caste, that I can say. But what he was, because in some
military can be Kshatriya.
yeah, but military is not Kshatriya in that decisive way. In the sense, Kshatriyas, it's very, that relationship is loose. But the Sikhs are generally the Sikh community. The Sikh community is in Punjab, the state of Punjab. And the British, when they wanted to recruit for their army, they started looking around to see who are the really martial, right? Who are the ones who have that sort of muscular, traditions of fighting and all that. Because not everybody, because a lot of Indians look puny and, sort of thin and starved and so on. So they identified certain, the Sikhs were among the people whom they identified. The Rajputs, the Gurkhas and so on, who were, they were called the martial races. And so Sikhs were in that kind of identification. This is one of the kind of images. You can see this kind of, you can see this image here. This is Bhagat Singh with a Christian sort of, and Hindu, and it's a kind of, you can see heads of the other martyrs being held up by his, in his hands, and various other inspiring figures in the background, and the dead people, coming back and showering with him with blessings, and Bharat Mata herself sort of at his feet. And here is another fantasy of Bhagat Singh's followers today. That is, this is a very new development. we have a student, Kunal Duggal, in my university, who did some work on the new icons, the new Bhagat Singh following. Bhagat Singh has a lot of new following, and depending on what they believe in, they attribute to Bhagat Singh their own sort of beliefs, and they also change the look of Bhagat Singh in order to suit. So, for instance, this idea, this Bhagat Singh wearing that turban, and this is not Bhagat Singh the revolutionary. Bhagat Singh the revolutionary was somebody who is already sort of in his last years. He has adopted a very modern sort of look for himself with that hat and everything. And he has given up on religion, all religious practices and so on. And he has an essay which we have here, Why I am an Atheist and so on. But in the recovery of Bhagat Singh as an icon by popular Punjab, in Punjab and in that Haryana, that area, there is a tendency to give him all kinds of new sort of iconic sort of image, attributes. So here you can see the Revolutionary Bank of India is issuing this 10,000 rupee note, in which instead of Gandhi, our notes always have Gandhi. So here is this Bhagat Singh gracing this 10,000. The Indian government has so far never issued a 10,000 rupee note, as far as I know, at least not for public consumption. But so this image was actually put out by the CPI ML, which is one of the Maoist outfits in Punjab. So, I mean, there are many. This is Kunal Duggal's. I just took some from his study. He says the identity of Bhagat Singh is represented within the regional identity as an upper caste Jat Sikh in Punjab, similar to the way in which Shivaji is represented as the Hindu king of Maharashtra and linked with Maharashtrian pride. Various state mechanisms time and again have used it as a regional asset to evoke regional nationalism, even though these historical personalities are known as national heroes. The evocation of regional identity takes place by elevating the status or stature of these people visually. So, the representation of Bhagat Singh with pagadi, that is the turban, can be seen as an attempt to create a Jat Sikh identity, which may be a product of the particular discourse of regional nationalism aiming for a separate state. So, it's happening in the context of Punjab. There is a Punjabi sort of nationalism, and in the 80s there was a